News.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
KVNU News Time is 4:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry. The Utah Department of Health reported 8 new COVID-19 deaths today. The state's COVID death toll has grown to 3,640 since the start of the pandemic. 189 of those deaths in Cache, Box Elder, and Rich counties. With 1,330 new COVID-positive cases in the state's Friday report, there have now been 610,681 cases since the pandemic began. UDOH said 93 of the total cases today were found in northern Utah. More than 34,000 of the total positive COVID cases reported in Utah the last 21 months have come from Cache, Box Elder, and Rich counties, while 32,990 COVID patients in northern Utah are considered recovered. Since the outbreak began, 1,593 in the Bear River Health District have been hospitalized. Hospitalizations statewide reported today amount to 536 Utahns, which is 13 fewer than on Thursday. Among those currently hospitalized, 212 are in intensive care, 3 more than Thursday. 26,542 Utahns have been hospitalized during the pandemic. The Utah Department of Health reported today that more than 95% of the state's ICU beds are occupied, and hospitals say that any figure over 85% is functionally full. With 18,702 people vaccinated since Thursday, the number of Utahns fully vaccinated is 1.85 million. More than 4.3 million doses have been administered. A school bus driver has been cited after a bus rolled off a snowy road in northern Utah. The Standard Examiner reports no one was hurt in the accident, which occurred Thursday morning on State Route 66 in Morgan County. Police say the driver and one student were on board when the bus slid off the road and rolled onto the driver's side. Utah Highway Patrol Sergeant Mike Irvine says the driver was cited for driving too fast for the conditions. A school district spokesperson said the crash happened as the bus was at the start of its run, picking up Morgan High School students. She called the crash a fluke that happened when the vehicle hit a slushy curve. And a Utah National Park famed for its otherworldly sandstone arches will require visitors to get timed entry tickets during its high season next year. The second Utah park to implement such a system as visitation swells. Park officials say the new timed entry system is not aimed at decreasing the number of people overall, but rather spreading them out over the course of the day. Arches National Park made the announcement today, a week after Zion National Park said it would require reservations to hike the famed Cliffside Angels Landing Trail. Arches visitation is on track to break another record this year with nearly 1.7 million visitors so far. KBNU weather is brought to you by Roof Rescue. Their experienced roofing team is tried and true and will fix your roof guaranteed. Visit roofrescueusa.com to schedule your free roof inspection. That's roofrescueusa.com. Roof Rescue, providing watertight peace of mind. Becoming partly cloudy tonight and overnight. Cold temps, overnight low 10 to 15, partly sunny into the low 30s on Saturday. Another chance of snow, about 20 to 30% late Saturday into Sunday. Today's high has been 31. For the latest news, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Is your family visiting for the holidays, or are they already here? Well, they have laundry to do using your machines, and it'll take away hours from your family time. We'll send them to Mount Logan Laundry with the large 55 and 80-pound washers and dryers that dry 30% faster. They'll find clean, comfortable environment with free Wi-Fi internet and drop-off service, and they'll be back in no time. Recommend Mount Logan Laundry. They're at 5th East and 9th North in Logan, or in Brigham City on the corner of 1st East and 7th South. Mount Logan Laundry, the cleanest spot in town.
610 AM and 102.1 FM. News Talk KVNU.
At Winco, we're working to save you money. Big savings on top quality meat, produce, seafood, and deli. Bakery fresh breads, cakes, and cookies made daily in store. Low prices on top quality national brands and thousands of our own private label. In every aisle, every department, every day.
Now open in Logan at 1341 North Main Street.
If you're near retirement or thinking about retiring, you probably have questions. How do you make your savings last? How much should you take out and when? You're ready for retirement, but are your finances? Your Edward Jones financial advisor can help you build a strategy to help your finances keep up with your needs over the long haul. You've done what it takes to get there. Now it's time to make the most of retirement. Visit edwardjones.com or stop by your local Edward Jones office. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Serving overseas was just the beginning. We might be home from war, but our mission continues in communities all across the country. It's why we're out there in times of peace and crisis, providing meals to the hungry and supplies to the sick. It's why we're giving strength to those who are too weak and bringing resources to those without them. Service doesn't stop when we're done serving. It's what makes us the VFW. Learn more at vfw.org.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cash Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have two guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People, hour one of today's show, Friday, December 10th. Bill Walter back in the studio here. Bill, welcome. We missed you yesterday.
Thank you. I was being inspected.
I
down in down at the hospital.
I pushed some wrong buttons while you were gone. There were a few beeps and boops that probably didn't need to happen during the show, but
well, you didn't hit the self-destruct button.
No,
so that's good.
No,
because everything's still intact here.
Gotten pretty good at avoiding that one, but yeah. Welcome to the show. I'm looking forward to the end of the year. It's one of I like all the holidays. You know, whether you celebrate them or not, there's something that's kind of fun about just the excitement of things, the busyness of things going on. And if you're, fond of retail shopping, there's plenty of that to do, of course, this time of year. But personally, the end of the year is probably one of my favorite annual celebrations, just because it gives you an excuse to look back, and usually in a positive way, I guess there are pessimists out there that make worse things that happened in 2021 top 10 lists. I prefer the positive ones, and we're going to be doing some of that. I realized yesterday, Bill, as I was actually talking on the show, it clicked that we're going to do a movie show today. We'll have a movie show next week, and then the timing of the holidays, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, means that's it for the year on movie shows.
Wow.
So, yeah. So Andy and
I don't think you're doing one 2 weeks from today.
No, it's New Year's Eve. That's what.
Or Christmas Eve, and then New
Christmas
Year's Eve,
and then New Year's
3 weeks.
Eve,
Yeah.
both falling on a Friday, as I said. So it's next Friday is it. Andy and I are talking about maybe doing a Thursday movie show on December 30th, the second to last day of the year, and recapping the year in movies. But We're still working out the details on how that would work. And it just surprised me. Just a few weeks left in 2021. And it actually, movie-wise, it's been a pretty big year. We'll be talking about this more in hour 2 of today's show as Andy arrives here in the studio. And I don't know, it's different. It's very, very different, to say the least, when it comes to movies. But I found this article, and this fits in hour 1 of today's show, outside of the movie show even, because it also speaks to issues in retail, issues that are still plaguing the restaurant industry. And the article itself is focused on movie theaters, but it's really enlightening as far as things we've in 2021. So look at it this way. 2020 comes along and it's a surprise. It's, everybody spends most of 2020 grappling with how to deal with this and how to respond to the pandemics itself. And so it's makes sense that, there are some, looking back, there are some things we did in 2020 that probably weren't necessary. And there were some things we didn't do that we probably should have. The biggest thing that stands out, I remember in January and February of 2020, you had pretty prominent health experts, I believe even a CDC spokesperson at a certain point, saying, don't rush out and buy masks. It's not going to come up. The supply is very limited. Leave them for the healthcare professionals. I hope that person's been fired from the CDC, but I don't know. I tried to find out, but that's one that stands out to me because obviously we found out that, and it makes sense, that for an airborne pandemic, masks were in the end going to be one of the most effective tools, second only to vaccines at keeping the pandemic at bay. And hopefully we continue down that road so this doesn't become endemic. I worry that we're getting close to that. But either way, big mistake. Closing schools. I know this is an unpopular opinion, and I know that there are a lot of healthcare professionals who have written about and talked about disagreeing where I sit on this one. But I think in hindsight, we could have, in theory, kept schools open and just quickly adopted. One thing that seemed to be very effective with schools, which stands out now that it's become kind of a political thing, even here in Utah, unfortunately, and isn't happening. But the mask mandates worked in schools. I mean, we have evidence of that. And so we probably could have just said, all right, kids are going to start wearing masks to schools, but the schools will stay open. And but, things were happening in such a rushed way. So that's on the public policy, health policy front. In the retail world, the restaurant world, all of this, you saw, I think one of the most amazing things that happened here in Cache Valley in 2020 were restaurants banding together to get a plan in place for curbside and delivery options. Many of these restaurants had never dealt with anything like that. They've been in-person seating only. And suddenly you're in a situation where the health department is saying that's a really bad idea to group people together for an extended period of time. It's still actually a bad idea. So they have to figure out a way to respond very quickly, and they do. And of course, the sales weren't what they could have been outside of a pandemic, but they were better than what the alternative was, which was just nothing. So that was very cool to see. In the retail world, it was a bit different, but they also came up with their own response. I even read a story at the Salt Lake Tribune website recently about real estate. I'd never thought of this, but there was a big discussion that happened within some of the larger real estate conglomerates, for lack of a better word, here in Utah, about how to keep real estate going. What are people going to be comfortable with as far as touring a home for sale or visiting with a realtor or things like that. And so they came up with their own way. It really speaks to how creative everyone can get when forced to. Then on the other side, there were these certain industries that just couldn't do a thing. And movie theaters really stand out in that, to me. Movie theaters, and there are other examples, but movie theaters are just an easy go-to example of an industry where their service or their product, whichever you want to call it, just wasn't something that could safely be offered in 2020. They came up with ways, and they reopened the theaters in June of 2020 with limited seating and mask mandates and things like that. But as we saw, the public at large just said no thank you. It wasn't a complete loss. Most movies that came out in 2020 made their money back, but some movies in 2020 made their money back. Most didn't. And so the distribution companies, the big movie makers, just sat on a lot of content knowing that would be the case. But so looking back even further, even more broadly, here in 2021, this article today at Vox Media, Why Movie Theaters Aren't Dead. It's a really interesting look at both the pandemic, 2020 and 2021, its effect on theaters, and using that as an example that could apply to things we've learned about our supply chain. That's a big one we learned in 2021. We saw it in 2020, but I think most people, including economic experts here in Utah, thought, well, once the pandemic at least abates a little bit, once vaccines are available, once people feel more comfortable going out, things will start to churn fastly enough that the supply chain will just fall back into place. That hasn't been the case. I mean, it's not as bad as some knee-jerk news reports have painted it. Things are flowing pretty smoothly. But you still see, even here in Cache Valley, you go into stores and you still see certain shelves, and it seems to change all the time, but certain shelves a little more empty than they normally are. And it's just because that week, for some reason, this was a hard thing to get delivered. And then you start getting that and something else is suddenly in short supply. And it keeps moving fast enough that most people aren't inconvenienced. And there's no, panic or rush on this product or that product like there was on toilet paper in 2020. But still, it's noticeable if you watch that. And I think we learned that our supply chain is a lot more fragile than maybe it needs to be, but also, how do you fix that? That was a big question that's been asked a lot throughout 2021. How do you fix the supply chain when considering the fact that one of the biggest dents in the supply chain right now is something you'll see in other news stories that usually don't mention the supply chain, but just do a quick Google search, you'll find no shortage of stories from even here in the Intermountain West of the truck driver shortage. But there are, other issues popping up along there. When you read a story about a truck driver shortage, what you're actually reading is a story about how fragile the supply chain is, how easily it can break. But what do you do about that? What are the fail-safes that you can build in? And that's public policymakers are going to have to take that up. So back to movie theaters again. Movie theaters respond in 2021. They come up with these plans. The public says thank you, but no, for the most part. And theaters are just sort of stuck in that world. 2021 comes along and things are better. Theaters, several movies that came out this year did fill theaters on a regular basis. Dune, for example, despite the fact that this was kind of a niche sci-fi, this isn't Star Wars sci-fi. This is real nerd sci-fi. How about that? It still packed theaters for about 3 weeks nationwide and made a lot of money. So people are warming to this idea. But back to this combining of movie theaters with everything else and supply chain issues, movie theaters faced a bigger threat in 2020 and 2021 than the empty theaters presented in 2020. So in 2020, again, the public basically saying no. 2021, the public's like, okay, we're back. Not fully, but enough. So things back to normal for the most part, or at least headed there quickly. One of the biggest threats, though, to movie theaters was actually the embrace of streaming services, and HBO Max is the best example of this. A lot of movies from Clint Eastwood's Cry Macho to Dune to the latest Will Smith vehicle, King Richard, they would premiere in theaters and then at the same time for 3 weeks at least, they would be available on HBO Max. Same time. So you had a choice. You could go to a theater and see these movies as they premiered, or you could pay, I don't know what it is, $14 a month. It's free with certain cable subscriptions, but not all, and have access to HBO Max and see the movie in your own home. And that's never been something that really took off before. Netflix had experimented with it and seen moderate results, and everyone had concluded that in the end, seeing it in the theater was the preferred option. There was something about that experience that people liked, especially as far as that opening weekend goes. Dire predictions throughout 2021. Looking at the subscription numbers for HBO Max and the growth that Hulu and Netflix and Disney Plus have all seen over the last couple of years, everyone predicting the end of the movie theater. The public has embraced. Here's a line from an actual article in the Salt Lake Tribune, or column rather, in the Salt Lake Tribune. Americans have embraced something that's been an option for a long time, which is bringing the entertainment experience into the home. Sales on home theater equipment have been up more than any other home device for the last 2 years. It speaks to where things are headed when it comes to how we choose to and prefer to get our entertainment. Now, that makes sense to me because these numbers are true. But at the same time, 2021 comes along. As I said, theaters they're not, people aren't lining up around the block to see movies, but the theaters are pretty full, and almost every movie made its money back, if not more. And some, again, like Dune, actually did really, really well, almost as well as they would have done pre-pandemic as a summer movie release or something like that. So in the end, these predictions that Americans were now a streaming community, that we decided that's our preference, it doesn't appear to have been the case. What appears to have been the case is that original conventional wisdom that when it comes to premiere events for movies, when it comes to concert events for music, when it comes to festival-style events for other arts and entertainment, people want that. And given the option in an environment that they can feel safe, even in an ongoing pandemic, going out and doing those things, they'll choose those things. It's a really interesting look at how certain things have kind of come full circle over the last 2 years, back to right where they were, with just some tweaks, some minor changes. For example, going to see a comedian at Kingsbury Hall in Salt Lake City, that's a very popular thing right now. 3 shows have sold out in the last 5 months at Kingsbury Hall there in Salt Lake City. But at other theaters, they're not having the same experience. What seems to be the difference? Well, Kingsbury Hall is mandating proof of vaccination and masks for every show. And people are saying they're choosing entertainment events there for that reason. Check it out. It's an interesting article. Vox Media looking at some of the largest cities around the country and comparing everything when it comes to movie theater attendance, retail sales, even hotel reservations. That was an interesting part of this as well. I've linked to it on our Facebook page, and we'll be back right after this.
With D.L. Evans Bank Digital Services, everything you need to manage your money is right there in the palm of your hand, the click of your mouse, the tap of your tablet. Transferring funds, depositing checks, even opening new accounts or taking out a loan are just a click away. We're right there with you, where you are, so you can spend a little less time banking and a little more time living. This is banking for here and now. This is Community Banking, D.L. Evans Bank.
Hi, this is Scott Howder. At Allen Mortuaries, we're mindful of the challenges and changes families who have lost loved ones experience during the holidays. We're also aware of the love, hope, and generosity of others. You are in our thoughts and prayers this holiday season, and we're also available to provide a measure of support whenever needed. We're always here to help. It's what we've been doing for over 80 years. Sincerely wishing you happy holidays from all of us at Allen Mortuaries. Then, now, always.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stopped smoking. Now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Steven.
Who said that?
Me, down here.
Ugh, what are you, a yellow booger?
I'm a banana slug, Steven.
What are you doing in my room?
I'm your sense of adventure. It's been a long time since we've had an adventure in the forest.
Mom took me to the forest last year.
I'm a slug, Steven. It took me a long time to get here.
You're right. I should get out.
Yeah, the forest is not that far away.
Hey, Mom!
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the US Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Trust this kid any further than I can throw him.
Well, with your bad knee, Ed, you shouldn't throw anybody.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Andy Morgan of AndyAtTheMovies.com will be joining us shortly here for bit of an extended For the People movie show. We've been trying to make these, as I mentioned at the start of the hour, only a couple of these left in the year. We've been trying to make these 2-hour events, but Andy, like me, has a day job and sometimes gets a little delayed. But he is going to be joining us early as possible, and we have a lot to talk about. It's been a pretty big week a couple of weeks as far as premieres go, but also, again, with only 2 movie shows left in the year, we've got to do some 2021 recapping. And so we'll be doing that during the movie show today. We'll talk more about this Vox Media article I mentioned that isn't just about movie theaters. It's about the wrong predictions that movie theaters had seen their end because of the pandemic, and that proving to not be the case. But in the article, they expand that out into some of the predictions that didn't come to be about retail, restaurant going, hotel reservations, all of that. We'll talk specifically about movies, though. Interesting little Mitt Romney news event this week, and it didn't make a single splash, which is, I guess, I get that. It isn't what a lot of people, I guess, would call pressing news or immediate news, but Romney has been kind of he's sort of been a little bit of a sage when it comes to certain. Remember years ago, Mitt Romney said Russia was our biggest threat, and people mocked him left and right, just absolutely laughed him off the stage for this. And Romney expanded on that and said, I'm not talking about a war necessarily. I'm talking about political influence, global political influence, that Russia is looking to destabilize the United States, and they're looking to negatively impact our standing with other countries so that they have the opportunity to go in and build relationships and kind of get ahead of us in the pecking order of large nations. And again, everyone laughed. Everyone, what is Mitt Romney talking about? Russia? Because this was a long time ago. I think it was like 7-8 years ago when he said that. He ended up being spot on. We saw it in the 2016 presidential election. We've seen it in not just the U.S., but some of their more under-the-table activities in several countries. And yet, despite this, when Romney says something that is kind of out there as far as what everyone else is talking about, he still isn't getting any traction. But this guy seems to know his thing. He's been prescient in a few situations. Well, I wouldn't say prescient because he's obviously basing it on something he's learned, some fact that's slipped under the radar for the rest of the political news economy. But he's doing it again, and I don't know if he'll end up being someone that in hindsight looks like a forward thinker, or that had his thumb on the pulse of this when the rest of us were asleep at the wheel. But Romney, again this week, out with something that met with kind of eye rolls for the most part, too, in fact. He said, first off, Romney in kind conversation with the Deseret News, in the conversation during a Senate committee hearing reported by the Deseret News, said, and it seemed to come out of sort of left field. During this Senate committee hearing Tuesday, they were talking about Russia amassing tens of thousands of troops along its border with Ukraine. And the United States foreign policy take on this is that this is a prelude, or could be a prelude to an invasion. And Romney, during the committee hearing, said, well, this is obviously a hostile act, and called Russia's actions outrageous and a threat to a sovereign nation without provocation. And but then what Romney did was he likened what Russia's doing to the situation with China and Taiwan. China has been a threat to Taiwan forever, and there are a lot of reasons for that. It's kind of complicated, but Taiwan is its own independent sovereign entity, and that's the only thing that's really kept China at bay. And Romney said during this committee hearing on Capitol Hill in D.C. on Tuesday, he said, there have been certain stalemates around the world. I'm paraphrasing him here. There have been certain stalemates around the world that are concerning, but we know they're stalemates. When it comes to Russia, we need to realize that we're dropping the ball on several fronts. And how we get to a point where Russia feels maybe, again, I mean, there are other things that might be up here. This could be just Putin trying to make himself look powerful enough to because he's seeing a deficit of support, having been a very popular elected official, quote unquote, elected official in Russia. He is losing some of that popularity. And so this might just be posturing to make himself look powerful and then regain the love and support of the majority of Russian voters. It might just be that. But it could, as Romney said, be a lead up to a plan to invade, which is something Russia has made really very little effort to try and hide their desire to do something to reclaim, in their mind, Ukraine. But again, Ukraine is a sovereign nation, so this would be an act of invasion, Romney said. But while he's talking about this, he said, we need to get ahead of these things. We don't do enough to condemn things before they reach this type of point. And he brought up the Olympics, which here's where people sort of chuckled and like, what is this guy talking about? He's coming out of left field with this, suddenly talking about the Beijing Olympics. Romney said that in an effort to get ahead of these types of things, we need to actually start holding these countries accountable long before they get to the point of amassing troops along the border, their border, up against another sovereign nation. And Romney said, we're making this mistake right now with China. And that's where people went, huh? But if you listen to what he said, it actually makes sense. He said that the United States and other, quote, free nations need to do more to globally join in a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Winter Games. And Romney said we need to do this for one reason, to protest China's human rights record, as at least 5 countries have announced they won't be sending any officials to Beijing in 2022. The U.S. has not. And he said this is a mistake. The leader of the 2002 Winter Games in Salt Lake City, Romney is known as, saying basically boycott the Olympics. Interestingly enough, he said more in an interview with ESPN, of all places. He goes on ESPN outside the lines after this event, and he said the reason for that, by the way, is that he spent a lot of time on Outside the Lines back in 2002. So they bring him on. They're like, what are you saying? Boycott the Olympics? You're Mr. Olympics. Why do you want to boycott the Olympics? And Romney explained. He said it is a way to send a message to, quote, link arms with our allies to divert China from its current course. Australia, New Zealand, Lithuania, and the United Kingdom have already announced a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Beijing Olympics, and I'm surprised the U.S. has not joined with them. He said that, by the way, the Olympic Committee scoffed at the idea of a diplomatic boycott and said that they've always had concerns about China as participants. Why suddenly it would be an issue now? Well, Romney responded to that as well. And he said there are a lot of reasons for that, but primarily going back to some things that are happening inside of China that would be considered a human rights violation, and also some of the things China is doing to other countries. So Romney making the point basically that we have a tendency because of diplomatic relations or economic concerns to just turn a blind eye to this kind of stuff. And then eventually what happens is you get, Russia of today. Looking to be, Romney said it almost looks as if Russia is looking to rebuild the USSR. And he says they're getting away with that because we turn a blind eye to a lot of other things. Like he pointed out in Russia how the LGBT community is treated inside of Russia, how certain religious organizations are treated inside of Russia. It's currently illegal for various religious organizations to meet in a religious capacity inside of Russia. And Romney said, we do nothing about this. We say nothing because of economic concerns, because of diplomatic concerns. And in the end, you just allow them to continue to build support until, like we're seeing with Russia now, they might be on the verge of invading another country just because they want to. So he said the U.S. needs to do more to make a stink about these things. And the soonest opportunity we would have to do that would be boycotting the 2022 Beijing Olympics. It's an interesting thing, but again, Romney he's proven to be a bit ahead of the game on certain foreign policy issues several times over. So I think we should maybe pause and listen to this one. I hope the White House is. We'll see. More of KVN News for the people on the other side of these headlines with KVN News' Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News is brought to you by U&I Furniture. A 38-year-old Smithfield man accused of physically beating a woman during a domestic dispute has waived his rights to a preliminary hearing. Daniel Alvarez has been in the Cache County Jail since being arrested November 15th. According to an arrest report, Smithfield City police officers were called to investigate a domestic dispute that purportedly occurred November 12th and 13th. The alleged victim explained how she and Alvarez had been drinking heavily when they began arguing. As the fight turned physical, the woman claimed Alvarez took her phone away so she could not call 911 for help. He then allegedly headbutted her in the forehead. As she attempted to leave, he tore chunks of her hair out. Later, the woman said she was able to get away from Alvarez. She ran to a nearby fast food restaurant yelling for help. When police and a victim's advocate interviewed the woman, they reported that she had a black eye, multiple bruises on her body, and clumps of hair ripped from her scalp. Police later contacted Alvarez and questioned him about the allegations. After reading him his Miranda rights, he stated that he did not remember any of the events that took place. Alvarez appeared in First District Court Thursday afternoon. He was previously charged with 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, 2 counts of assault, a Class A misdemeanor, and with damage to a communications device and intoxication. The charges carry a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. This winter, more motorists in Montana may find themselves stuck on snowy highways or have their travel delayed due to a shortage of snowplow drivers. Actually, states from Washington to Pennsylvania and some in the Rocky Mountain areas like Montana are having trouble finding enough people willing to take the comparatively low-paying jobs that require a commercial driver's license and often entail working at odd hours in dangerous conditions. States are warning that it could take longer for the plows to clear highways during winter storms. And Wyoming lawmakers have again decided against major election changes supported by former President Donald Trump. A state legislative committee voted Thursday to indefinitely set aside a bill that would establish runoff elections. Proponents of the change point out that some candidates in Wyoming win crowded primaries with less than a majority of the vote. The Casper Star-Tribune reports Trump supports the change while he backs a primary rival for Liz Cheney. Trump opposes Cheney for voting to impeach him for his role in the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. At least 3 Republicans are running against Cheney, including Trump-backed attorney Harriet Hageman. KVNU weather brought to you by Berenson Caldwell. When the bills from your accident pile up, it's time for you to consider professional legal advice. It's time for you to get the bear. Berenson Caldwell. Visit berensonlaw.com. Partly cloudy tonight and overnight, low 10 to 15. Partly sunny into the low 30s on Saturday. Another chance of snow, 20 to 30% Saturday night into early Sunday. Today's high was 31. For the latest news, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
The family's coming home for the holidays, and you'll need sofas to sit on, beds to sleep in, and tables to eat at. Upgrade your furniture for less than you think at U&I Furniture. Their #1 selling mattress is a Therapeutic Queen mattress for $399. An upgrade to a Maloof for only $599. Take home a good deal on an American-made sofa love or a recliner from Franklin, Southern Motion, Broyhill, and Lane. And their most popular dining set seats 6 with 4 chairs and a bench for $899. Get your home holiday ready at the place where there's always a better buy. U&I Furniture, 28 West 1st North, downtown Logan.
This is Amanda Boydston bringing you the daily financial market report on behalf of financial advisor Clayton McMurdy and Edward Jones for Friday, December 10th. Equities traded higher on Friday, logging a solid gain for the week. Stocks and bonds shrugged off a hot inflation report this morning, an indication that the financial markets are already pricing in elevated inflation and triggering policy from the Fed. Small caps lagged today, as did the financial service sector, signaling some cautious around the economy outlook. The Dow closed up 216 points at 35,971. The NASDAQ closed up 113 points at 15,631. S&P closed up 45 points at 4,712. In commodity market, the price of oil up $1 at $71.94, and the price of gold was up $6 to $1,782.90. In stocks of local interest, Apple was up $4.89 at $179.45. Autoliv was up $1.76 at $103.09. Campbell's was up 97 cents at $43.15. General Electric was down 88 cents at $96.95. Home Depot was up $4.06 at $415.40. Lowe's was up $3.23 at $261.38. Nucor was up 32 cents at $113.21. Procter & Gamble was up $2.14 at $155.46. R.R. Donnelley was up 37 cents at $11.12. Thermo Fisher was up $5.44 at $642.51. Wells Fargo was up 51 cents at $50.20. Walmart was up $2.53 at $141.03. And Zions was up 20 cents at $63.21. This has been today's financial market report brought to you on behalf of Edward Jones, member SIPC, and Clayton McMurdy, serving individual investors with personalized attention and financial advice at 1309 North Main in Logan. If you'd like additional information, please contact us at 435-753-0537.
So many social engagements, so little time.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. It is with great pleasure, I should say, that for NHL fans out there, by the way, this has been a fun season so far, but we'll leave it there for now. We'll leave that conversation for the guys over at the Fan, full court press happening as we speak. An interesting article today, and I'm sure this will be controversial, but an interesting article today from a libertarian think tank here in Utah called Libertas Institute, to be specific. But this is a think tank headed up. It's a pretty small operation. I think it's like 3-4 people. And Connor Boyack is one of them. He was a frequent guest on our show several years ago, as we did with the For the People book club. We went through his book Fearedom. which was talking about how politicians exploit crisis to achieve goals they've had forever, and the crisis becomes an excuse for that. And he uses many examples. It's a fun book to read. It'll make you think. Boyack, though, is president of the Libertas Institute, and he's a well-known and a bit of an ideologue when it comes to being a libertarian. He'll admit it himself, but meaning that they tend to believe that only libertarian things are going to achieve any kind of advancement, which is rarely true of any political ideology, that it is the only way forward. Still, they come up with some good ideas once in a while. And Paul Miro, if he were here, he'd probably slap me. He bemoans a lot, justifiably, I think, the influence of libertarians on the Utah Republican Party. Utah Republican Party, is a conservative organization that they just campaign as libertarians every couple of years. But Paul said that was actually stopping them from doing conservative things. So that fight still rages within the Utah Republican Party. And the reason I bring that up is not just a gossip, although it's interesting. It's because a lot of times Libertas Institute and libertarians in general, even if they have a good idea, have a hard time getting certain lawmakers, and those tend to be the most powerful lawmakers, those who chair important committees and things like that. They have a hard time getting them to take them seriously because of this rift between conservatives and libertarians. So where this goes, I make no predictions. A lot of good ideas the Libertas has had have just kind of fallen on deaf ears. But this is one, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not even convinced this is a good idea because I can see a lot of potential negative side effects of this. But it's something we should talk about. And maybe it doesn't have to be exactly what Libertas is suggesting here, which is basically what they're calling, and I kind of eye roll at some of the titles we use for stuff like this. But I get it. This would be a good sell for Republican lawmakers. But they're calling it a proposal for market-based tuition. The proposal for market-based tuition, Libertas writes in an article today, posted to their website, a report today, rather, posted to their website, would be a game changer. And the short version of this is Libertas is saying that colleges in Utah should be allowed to experiment with demand-driven tuition, meaning if a certain degree, let's just say an engineering degree, say that there are companies clamoring for engineering students here in Utah, and the shortage or the lack of engineering students they're finding is holding up economic development in this way or that way. And now that is true. I don't know if it's engineering or what, but out there somewhere right now, I guarantee you there's an industry that is having a hard time finding the qualified workforce they need, and would like to see that change, or like to see the state do something to change that. The state is often limited on options, and so Libertas is saying this could be an option. If you allowed colleges to, say, offer discounted tuition for engineering majors, then maybe that would get more people going into that field. And again, I'm just using engineering arbitrarily. I don't think we have an engineering major shortage. But in fact, I know we don't. But say we did. Libertas is saying if you allowed colleges to offer a reduced tuition for people who choose an engineering degree, if that were the degree in demand, then you would encourage more people into that field. Libertas argues that this would allow the market to kind of dictate which majors at public universities in Utah were attracting the most students. And I can see some of the criticism that this is definitely going to get, and maybe deserves, because there are some potential negative side effects. One, what do you do, considering an engineering degree is a 4 to 5 year process, what do you do if the shortage and demand is 2 years, and then suddenly there's a surplus? Does tuition suddenly go up for that student because they took too long to graduate, or are they locked in at a reduced tuition? And then if they are, what does that do to the university's ability to finance itself, to keep its operations going? Do they have to hike tuition on, say, a certain humanities degree, which I would argue is equally important to have a lot of students graduating with, because it's not currently in demand? So there are potential negative side effects of this, but I would love to see a conversation. I don't know how you quantify this stuff. I don't know how you would research the potential effects of something like this. But I'd like to see the conversation happen. I'd like to see people start digging into this because it could prove to be something that's very useful for public universities and for students and graduates. I would like to see a guarantee if, say, you're going to have some committee or apparatus at public universities where representatives or lobbyists, if you will, of certain industries and fields of work go lobby the university for a reduced tuition for X degree. I would like to see them locked into an agreement to do a certain amount of hiring if they're going to ask for that. That would be, I think, a fail-safe that could stop at least one of the potential negative ramifications of this. But again, I think it's something we should talk about. The idea, again, is just the technical term for this. Libertas, for marketing reasons, is calling it a market-based approach. But the technical term for this would be something universities already do for other reasons, which is differential tuition. I think we should talk about it. Please take a second to read the article, whether you end up agreeing or not. It will cause you to think, and it does tie in with several of the economic-related issues we've talked about this week on the show, from the governor's budget and some of the reasons certain things are in that budget to some of the challenges the legislature is going to have to bite off in the upcoming legislative session. This could be a potential solution. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. Libertas Institute, libertarian think tank here in Utah, proposing the universities in Utah adopt they call it market-based, I would call it just a differential tuition system for degrees that are in high demand. Link on our Facebook page. We'll be back right after this.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
Give the gift of fitness this holiday season. The iFit Foundation, formerly known as the Icon Foundation, is helping you save big on treadmills, ellipticals, exercise bikes, rowers, and fitness accessories at up to 70% off retail prices. Stop by the iFit Foundation winter sale this Friday, December 10th from 1 to 5:30 p.m. and Saturday the 11th from 10 a.m. until noon. These are the absolute best prices you will find all year on top brands like Nordic Track, Proform, iFit, Weider, and Weslow. Stop by the iFit Foundation Facebook page for the latest updates. 100% of the net proceeds will be donated to local families in need and community charities. The iFit Foundation has helped thousands of individuals through temporary hardship over the years, and now you can help. If you're looking for fitness products from top brands, don't miss this sale. Friday, December 10th from 1 to 5:30 and Saturday the 11th from 10 a.m. until 12 noon. Located near the iFit campus at 838 West, 1600 South.
Look for the sale signs.
Full details can be found at the iFit Foundation Facebook page.
This Christmas, give the gift of jewelry. See S.C. Needham Jewelers for an outstanding selection of diamond jewelry, rings, pendants, earrings, and bracelets, offered in white gold, yellow gold, and rose gold. We also offer the largest selection of loose diamonds in northern Utah in both natural and lab-grown diamonds. Select a beautiful diamond and have it mounted in a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry that will be cherished for generations. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 7. S.C. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block, at the sign of the clock.
This is Detective Micah Veers with the Logan Police Department and the Utah Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. The police department will be hosting a 1-hour child sexual predator and internet safety presentation for the community on Tuesday, December 14th at 6 p.m. in the Logan City Council chambers. This presentation is for adults and covers mature topics such as psychology of a sex offender, signs of child grooming and molestation, child pornography, and other internet sex crimes, as well as information about social media and general internet safety. So please join the Logan City Police Department on Tuesday, December 14th at 6 p.m. in the Logan City Council chambers.
Sometimes, when we catch a moment of wonder, it touches our hearts, especially during this, a season of light.
This holiday season, explore the wonder of life at Loveland Living Planet Aquarium's Festival of the Seas. Discover a world of magic with seasonal treats, spectacular scenes, and a seaside Santa at Loveland Living Planet Aquarium. Make your reservation today at thelivingplanet.com.
That's it for hour one of today's show, but stay tuned. Hour two in just a few minutes with the For the People movie show. Andy Morgan will be here with us talking about I think one of the most anticipated, I would say second only to Dune, movies of the year, especially for fans of theatrical musicals. West Side Story has officially hit theaters, and audiences are loving it. What do the critics, including our own Andy Morgan, think? We're talking about that and more, recapping some of 2021 and, well, just generally having a